What in the impossible product is this? This is the GSKill F5 6000J3644 D6 GX4 TZ5NR. There's 4 64 gig DDR5 DIMMs in this. I have before me the new and updated AM5 platforms. We've got the Phantom Gaming and the Live Mixer X870E with improvements and improved support and new Giza to support 256 gig kits of memory, and this is the first actual 256 gig kit of memory that I've been testing. And I'm curious here because it says DDR5 6000. And you know, the officially supported speeds is DDR5 3600. Can we achieve DDR5 6000 and get stability? There's a forum thread that has some of the most hard-won knowledge ever from level 1 community members that have shared their termination and timing settings for getting DDR5 to work at speed 256 gigs on the AM5 platform. Although still 192 gigs is a little easier. It's a little easier to deal with. But GSKill's coming in clutch, I think. Let's find out. Got my Keychron keyboard and USB connections here and our test bench, and it's already got my error correcting UDIMM DDR5 memory in it. Gotta pop that out. 256 gigs is a worst case scenario when we're talking about DDR5 training. It has to get all the way to the end of its training. It doesn't start with training 256 gigs because who has that? Really, who has that? This is also why it's important to update your BIOS before you upgrade. If you've already got an existing system, make sure that you have brought your BIOS to the newest version. We'll also test some X670E motherboards here in a little bit. There were some definite contenders for high quality, high performance motherboards in the X670E line. And I don't see any reason why those shouldn't also work, especially the boards that were more than 8 layers or had extra ground planes for signal integrity. But it's probably just a matter of making sure that the BIOS is updated for those platforms and that the board manufacturer has put in the necessary work to do the fine tuning for those particular things. This is what you'll see when it trains, if everything trains correctly. We've got 5600. I mean, DDR5 5600, it knows that it's supposed to be 5600, but it's training at 3600 because that's, you know, the 4 DIMM is the Giza default. It's great. It's fantastic. This memory kit is designed for AMD and it has 2 Expo profiles, 5600 and Expo 6000. We can try the 5600 profile selection, but I'm going to start with the Expo 6000. And notice that Expo is an overclock and DDR5 5600 is like the normal profile, but again, this platform is going to train in the more conservative setting because 4 DIMMs. Now, assuming this works, we're going to be using Passmark's MemTest 86 to detect problems, but with those changes, we will be once again waiting for the training to complete, which will take a little while. This is also the part where, like, if it fails to train, you may end up waiting more, or you may be tempted to hit the clear CMOS button on the back. But you can spend upwards of an hour or 2 working on this, even if you're not doing a lot of manual configurations because of, you know, set, reset. If it doesn't work the first time, you might try it again. Maybe you're going to give it, you know, it's actually stuck, but you give it like 30 minutes to do the training. That's just how it goes. Well, good news, everybody. The Live Mixer X870 Wi-Fi and the Phantom Gaming X870 3600 perfectly stable, even for hours and hours and hours of burn-in testing. Yay! That's good. But 3600 mega transfers, 4400 and above, out, even with custom termination settings. Let's try our Gigabyte Aorus motherboard next. Yeah, we're gonna do the X670E, and then we're gonna try the X870E. Just cause, holy smokes, Aorus, that's impressive. 1 minute, 39 seconds to first post with the 256 gig kit on the August 2025 BIOS and a Giza. Dang. All right, let's try Expo. Let's roll the dice. Oh, and in case I forgot to say, that is DDR5 3600. So it's, you know, it's the default. It's not gonna load the Expo, but still, minute 39 for DDR5 3600, you know, straight to where it needed to be. On an X670E motherboard, Good job, Gigabyte / Aorus. I like the way Aorus handles the boot failure. You get an actual boot failure detected screen. This is a little different than the ASRock, but yeah, it gave up and booted to 3600, 4400, 5600. No go on this board. I mean, to be clear, there's probably people in the level 1 forums that are doing these higher speeds with manual tuning. So you should check out the forum threads if you're into that. I'm just doing some basic things just to see what the out-of-box experience is. 3600 with 4 DIMMs, 256 gigs, it's nothing to sneeze at, that's great. But if you want beyond that, stability enters into the equation and so on and so forth, but 3600 being rock solid stable, yeah, I mean, I'll take that. Here we go. Will the X870E Aorus Master from Gigabyte, with the very same 9800X3D CPU that was in the X670E, be able to post above DDR5 3600? Something slightly weird the Gigabyte board did is that after it completed a post, it rebooted it, but it didn't boot from USB. It rebooted again and seemed to do some kind of confirmation step, like an extra confirmation in training. And that took another minute or so. So, cool. 51.4 gigabytes per second is reported by Memtest86. DDR5 6000, it's coming up. No errors so far, but it only just started the test. We gotta give it a little while to finish. All right, let's try our ROG Crosshair X870E Hero, because I'm still trying to find the X870E Aorus board. It's here somewhere. Well, looks like our first volley with the ROG Crosshair. This is the X670E Hero. Just under 2 minutes, like 1 minute 58, 1 minute 59, somewhere through there. DDR5 3600, of course, is what it boots up at. Let's try the Expo profile. Now, to try to give ASUS as fair a shot as possible, their menu has Expo 1, Expo 2, and Expo Tweaked. There's a lot of ASUS special sauce. Sometimes that's amazing. Sometimes it gets you into trouble. So we're gonna have to try a bunch more combinations on this motherboard that we normally have to try. But I just picked Expo 1 for now, DDR5 6000. We'll see if that works out for us. So that makes our X870E, our ROG boards, okay. Even the X670E is okay. And now we're gonna move on to the MSI, starting with the Tomahawk X870E, because it also got a BIOS update. The training time on MSI was generally about 2 minutes between our different boards here. It had a little bit of variation. Best time was 1:49. Interesting, because we see that number a lot. And our worst time was like 3.5 minutes. One time, our Tomahawk, not Max, this is the X870E. I'm just doing some additional tests on this one because a couple of times it got stuck on 64. It didn't do anything. It just said 64, but it didn't boot. There was nothing on screen. The keyboard didn't initialize. Not sure what was happening there, but it recovered every time. I cleared CMOS, let it go, back into CMOS, set Expo profile, and we're off to the races. DDR5 6000. Always, always, always update your BIOS. And so I have to update the BIOS on every single one of these boards because the BIOSes are a week to 3 weeks old. And that makes a huge difference for this whole 4 DIMM situation, because you need the new Agiza and the new BIOS tweaks and everything else. Ooh, ASUS pulling out a win, I think. I just started Memtest 86. We're gonna let this run for a little while. But DDR5 6000 on all 4 DIMMs. I notice our memory bandwidth is 49 gigabytes per second as reported by this, which is, you know, sometimes you can run DDR5 6000, but then you increase the cache latency to like 1 billion. That's not what they've done. I was worried about that, but that's not what has happened here. And remember, this is the X670E, so it's an older board, but with the BIOS update, and it's working fantastic. Well, the plot thickens. Okay, so I've got this other project that I'm working on that involves X3D processors, and you can see I've expanded the testing of our 256 gig kit a bit, and that is because of success. Success?
Great success.
I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, but I kind of do. There's an aspect of this that is still silicon lottery. So even though it was working pretty good on my X3D processors, I decided to test more other AM5 processors. And I do have some processors that still struggle with stability, perfect stability at DDR5 6000 with 4 DIMMs, especially in a fully loaded I/O configuration where I've got, you know, my Gen 5 GPU and everything else. But it's surprisingly good. This GSKill memory kit at DDR5 6000 does seem like your best shot at getting DDR5 6000 working in a bunch of different configurations. But the more recent MSI motherboards, the Tomahawk, I've got the Tomahawk and the Tomahawk Max, and we're talking about the X870E and the B850 version, are working fantastically well. It seems like the worst motherboards here for the DDR5 6000 compatibility so far are ASRock and some of the older Gigabyte motherboards. Even the newer X870E struggles a little bit with different CPUs, and so I think your best compatibility here is MSI and ASUS, interestingly. Oh, one parting note of wisdom: if you are tempted to combine like your best case scenario motherboard with, say, your best case CPU, which you might think would be an AMD EPYC CPU for AM5, don't do it. Those AM5 CPUs are locked. You're going to be running DDR5 3600 on 4 DIMMs, not DDR5 6000. Very important. Okay, bottom line, testing a bunch of boards. This is only a small fraction of the boards and different processors. Bottom line, I was super surprised that DDR5 4 sticks of memory 6000 is attainable, but it doesn't necessarily translate across all other different configurations. What if you had 2 of the older GSKill DDR5 6000 kits that were bought at the same time and are the same part number? Can you expect those to work at DDR5 6000? Maybe, but also maybe not. There's a lot of this that's down to silicon lottery. Now, before you hyperfixate on DDR5 6000, let me say that DDR5 3600, all 4 DIMMs, across all of these boards from every vendor was hugely improved, shockingly improved. And in fact, I wouldn't not recommend that. I don't know that I would recommend it, but if you really need 256 gigs of memory, you should be able to get an appropriate kit of memory and get it running at DDR5 3600. We've used, you know, relatively bog standard like JEDEC 5600 kits of memory. They don't have a heat spreader. They're made for commercial ends. 4 of those 64 gigs are more stable than I've ever experienced them being stable across all of these. And this is not just using MemTest 86, this is also using Y-Cruncher, because Y-Cruncher actually, believe it or not, is a harder test for this platform. And speaking of harder tests for this platform, if you have a lot of PCIe 5 peripherals, a PCIe 5 GPU plus a PCIe 5 NVMe, that seems to be able to alter the geometry of what sort of memory stability that you'll experience when you go beyond DDR5 3600. This is a really interesting side mission, so pay attention. If you have a lot of really high-speed I/O and graphics stuff going on while you're also trying to drive DDR5 6000, it can be a little bit in the silicon lottery territory depending on your specific CPU and your specific motherboard. Now, if I had to rank everything based on my experiences, MSI is far and away out in front, ahead of everybody else. The B860 and the Tomahawk Max and the Tomahawk Max Wi-Fi and other MSI boards are really far out in front. The X870E Godlike, Tomahawk Carbon, X870P, X870E, the B850, even the Edge TI and the Mortar, the little mortar board can do, like, how insane is that? The B850M. Second is ASUS. I'm so happy, pleased as punch, that even on our X670E with the BIOS updates, I can basically get DDR5 6000 almost, not quite perfectly stable. I mean, it's basically stable. You just have to tweak a couple things in BIOS and then it's stable. The best boards from ASUS were the RO Strix based around the B850, believe it or not. The variants of that, A, F, and G, whatever they did for the board layout for the ROG Strix B850, 4 DIMMs, 256 gigs. ASRock coming in third. ASRock is a little hit and miss. Like, it's actually hard to do DDR5 6000. While I was working on this video, ASRock did a second refresh of all of their BIOSes. The X870E Tai Chi was kind of okay, but you will have to mess around with some stuff manually. Check out the Zen Timings forum thread. I'm really hoping that ASRock is able to improve the situation, and then Gigabyte was trailing up the rear. Now, Gigabyte seemed to do like a half release and then like another half release for their boards, the X870E Aorus Master, almost works perfectly right out of the box. And you can fix the errors, or if you want to run at a slower speed than DDR5 6000, then yeah, that'll take care of it. Like DDR5 5600 I think is safe on the X870E with those specific kits of memory. So anyway, there we are. That's the state of 4 DIMMs on AM5 in 2025. Just barely starting to go into Q4. Things may get even more interesting towards the end of the year. ASRock, I'm counting on you to make your BIOS have a little bit more sane defaults, because I can play with the settings, I can go into Zen timings, and I can almost achieve stability on the higher end boards. It's a little, like, it starts to get a little sketch when you're below Steel Legend. But everything above Steel Legend, if you manually tune it, ASRock, get on it, get it done, get it fixed. MSI and ASUS are showing you how it's done with 4 DIMMs and high speed, high compatibility. Sometimes on ASUS you gotta pick Expo 2, but that's okay. Yeah, it's nice. I'm Willis Level 1. If you have any questions or you want to share your own experiences, hit up the forum, because this is one of those cases where having the data of what people experience in numbers is part of what this community is about. So share pictures of your setup and share pictures of your timings and contribute to the knowledge that's already there. There's a lot of knowledge that I used in this video, so thanks to the community for posting stuff already. It's a Herculean task and it's a pain, but it's useful to me and it's useful to everybody else, so thank you. And thanks to our subs and patrons and everybody else, because they make this kind of thing possible, because, you know, I don't get sent this many motherboards. We buy a lot of stuff. But GSKill did send me that 256 gig kit slightly ahead of availability, so I could test it and run it through its paces. And I did not at all, like, I thought it was going to be, oh yeah, we can do DDR5 3600 stable across, you know, whatever. And to be sure, DDR5 3600, you can now expect it to be stable with the right kit of memory. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'm Willis Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums, which is where you should be if you are embarking on this journey anyway. And it wouldn't hurt to sub either. All right, I'm signing out and I'll see you there.